we really want to initiate the co-creation today of the next two playbook pathways. So in this drop-in session, we will talk you through the broad themes around both of them, and then hopefully through your input, we'll validate them. We'll make sure that they are going to be useful for you, and we can amend and change them as is needed. Then, to help us work out exactly what content is needed and to start the conversations which will give these pathways a bit of shape and context, we want to try and capture some of the challenges which you need addressed, which are relevant to these two broad themes. So the first part of this, I'm going to talk you through the stakeholder engagement pathway, and then I'll pass over to my colleague Colin McFadden, who will talk you through the workforce pathway. Throughout, our colleague Laura will be taking notes, so we'll have a record of everything we've discussed. And then at the end, Colin is going to sum up for us, and we'll talk about what might be happening next, as well as highlighting a few different events we have coming up. Now, I've already used the word co-create multiple times, and the other thing we're really hoping to gain from today is some volunteers. Especially as we move away from some of the more technical elements of the playbook, we're really keen to start creating the content with you. And so if any of the topics we're talking about today are of particular interest and you'd like to help us create some of the documents which will go on the next pathway, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Without further ado, we have the stakeholder engagement pathway. So the aim of this playbook pathway is to support partnerships to coordinate stakeholder engagement throughout the implementation of digital telecare. So this is making sure that the right people are communicated with at the right times, and that the messages which are being put out are consistent and clear. And if possible, and we can work together, it would be good to try and ensure a consistent message across Scotland. So with that very brief, and you can see we haven't put much detail to this yet. We have a broad theme, and that's really because we didn't want to before we'd had a chance to gain your ideas and feedback. So we've kept it as broad as possible, and then hopefully through looking at some of the questions we're about to discuss, we'll be able to start narrowing this down, and the pathway structure will start to emerge. So for the stakeholder engagement pathway, we had two key questions we wanted to look at today. And the first is, who are the key stakeholders that you need to engage with? You know, I think with a question like that, actually, I could probably just come out of the presentation briefly to discuss it a little bit. I think with this, either feel free to start shouting out, or even if you want to start adding some into the chat window, I think either way, but we're really just starting to get trying to ensure that we've got the right idea about who the different people you're going to be communicating about the changeover from analog to digital will be.
Can I just reiterate there, for people who've just joined us, we are obviously recording the session, so if you're not wanting your face and the rest of your room to be recorded, if you take yourself off video, if you're happy enough with that, that's all very well, but if you want to take yourself off video, if you're not wanting to be recorded for posterity, then that would be good too.
Great, so James has got us started with housing colleagues, which is really good, and I think David, you've got your hand raised.
Elizabeth also said teaching colleagues as well.
Yeah, sorry, Thomas. Yeah, I was just going to say citizen as a group that I'm keen to consider.
Which probably covers in with what Ian's just pointed out to service users and responding staff, as well as both chief officers and NHS colleagues, ICT colleagues and home care. Claire suggested home care. That's just beyond the response, Claire, or are you thinking of a wider group than just the responder staff?
Yeah, I don't speak for Claire, but I was just going to agree with that actually. So home care staff, as you know, will be in with citizens lots of the time, and actually some of the time we'll be kind of supporting them with technology and engaging with citizens through that in some ways. So it's a bit of a gap in terms of provision at the moment. I think that home care staff don't really know enough about the service, how the service operates, how the technology.
Mm-hmm. So, as well as just ICT, we've also had data security and information governance and external communications, which can obviously fit into different groups. Elizabeth mentioned parents, and actually that's probably it's just a wider family group as well, isn't it? Because the service users themselves, and then there are issues around the rest of the family as a whole. I would have thought. In fact, I think Geraldine's just pointed out POAs and guardians. So yeah, I agree with that.
There's some really great ones coming through. Definitely. I wonder, one which I haven't seen yet, and I'm keen to see if this is relevant. Would third sector organisations be worth including? So, for instance, in your kind of responder models, does anybody work with third sector organisations to kind of help provide care, or is that a bit off piece?
I think that's a good point, Thomas, and I also think some providers provide telecare services as well, so should probably be part of the discussion, should be aware of the change that's happening. I'm not sure if they are fully aware. I think there's more that could be done with that sector, so I think that's a good point.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I think we've got a really good list there that we can start pulling together into a bit of a stakeholder map for you afterwards. I'm keen to go into the second question because I'm sure this is the one which is going to lead to the most discussion. And to be honest, I'm finding this a bit better. I'm not sure we necessarily need the questions up while we're discussing them. And so the second one is, what challenges exist around engaging stakeholders in the analog to digital telecare process for you? And that really is as broad as it sounds. So we're just keen to start working out how we might be able to help in this area. What kind of things would you be looking for?
Okay, so the first one's coming through at the moment. So if it's not seen as a priority to them, and also looking for standard templates that would explain the coming changes in plain, easy to understand language. Ian said that it can be, again, very technically area to explain how to sell the benefits and how to make it clear and easy to understand is quite clearly the main ones that are coming through at the moment. So, I mean, we've got initial documents that we could probably use there from the existing pathways in terms of the beginner's guide. Even those might need to get rewritten a bit and clarified, but we can look at those and just make sure that everything is in what was the Diamond Clear standard. Also, what the client has to do themselves, and how to make it clear that remaining analog isn't an option. That's probably quite important for quite a few areas.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Gillian makes a really good point there around data security. So everyone in the call will be familiar with this, but this is a significant shift from a really kind of locked down analog system into what's fundamentally an ICT service, and that will be concerning for people around the different types of data that we're transmitting, the different methods of transmitting them as well. So I think anything we can do to reassure citizens that that's a kind of key component, security is a key component of the programme would be good.
I suppose also giving the staff the information so that they can do that reassurance as well, so they can understand it themselves and they can provide that reassurance, because a piece of information coming out from a partnership and then being possibly undermined by a member of staff not being quite as clear be problematic. Yeah, it's just being able to give the staff that security as well, information.
Yes, good point. And again, most people in COG probably know this, but what we've seen as part of this programme is a real shift in terms of the suppliers' approach around some of these things. So in the past, they've probably not seen some of these issues as real risks and haven't really prepared to manage them in the way that we would like, and that's really improved over the last 12 months. So it's maybe a good thing for us to highlight in terms of the work we've done to collaborate with suppliers to get them to a place that they're compliant with all of the kind of regs that wrap around this. So it'll be a good opportunity for us.
Yeah, there's a couple of other points across here about selling the benefits, and I imagine that'll be to both service users and to certain parts of the staff, to promote buy-in from those who don't make a shift, and so they actually understand probably more than just that it's more than just the basic line switching, the actual overall benefits of what digital can achieve, and to allow that to wash out across the sector.
I think James has just made a really interesting point around there's no point in us saying something that is contradicted by suppliers such as BT. And I think that's absolutely something we can look at, looking at the messages which are being put out by the likes of OpenReach and the main telecos, and understanding what they'll be communicating and how, and then so that it enabled to factor that into communication plans. And there could be at some point some slight discrepancies in some of those messaging. I also, from what I've seen so far, it looks quite likely that a staple of their messaging, particularly around tele alarms, is contact your service provider, they'll tell you. And so we'll maybe be able to get ahead of that a little bit and try and head off a deluge of inquiries.
Yeah. Gillian's another point there. I thought, was that what you were about to say, David?
Yeah.
The persuading senior management that it's worth investing in, because we can talk about the benefits all we want, but if the budget holders don't release, then all we're going to be able to get is the basic services. So again, being able to promote benefits of a wider digital telecare, so that stakeholders, I mean, when I'd said this before, I was thinking in terms of getting people on board that are going to be using it, but you're absolutely right. You getting senior management team on board, understanding what the overall benefits are, so that they can invest for the future.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think Ian mentioned earlier as well around chief officers, and as part of this programme, we've had a wee bit of success kind of influencing chief officers and getting them on board with the programme, and it's really helped actually at kind of operational level to get that senior level sponsorship. So it's something we're mindful of as part of this pathway, that we'll look at what tools we can offer to partnerships to get a bit of support to engage with senior officers and get the sponsorship.
The other thing I'd be keen to, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but I know we've got a number of our partnerships on the call today who are already in the process of converting to digital telecare. And I just wonder if any of you have already started any communications, if you've got any experiences you'd be willing to share with the group.
Yeah, not there yet. I think it's a consensus there.
Well, I think it's Andy from Edinburgh. I think Edinburgh during COVID has put a lot of effort into contacting citizens, and we've several scripts underway in having conversations around need. But post-COVID, our hope is, and we're almost there, our hope is to enter into regular conversations with citizens around our service, and we've started up a citizen engagement group which will be made up of a cross-section of users. And I think that first meeting is due in next week, I think it is. And I can see how a logical step would be to start to have conversations around the digital transformation. And that will be a good avenue for us to not only to engage, but also to understand what the issues are for citizens around Edinburgh. And I'm sure there will be some suspicion, possibly, a lot of quizzical looks, I imagine, but I think it is a good forum for us to start to unpick what the challenges will be for us. And I think it's not just digital either. I think across the whole services that we provide, I think it's going to be a really useful channel for us to focus what we do in line with what citizens' current needs are. So I think the digital subject will come up very quickly. I think there is a general awareness around Scotland and the UK of change. A lot of users now will be very savvy with broadband and the internet. So I think the conversation will hopefully follow fairly comfortably, but that will be our approach. Probably later in this year, we'll start to have those conversations.
Thanks, Andy. That's exactly the kind of thing I was hoping might start to come up. And would you be willing for us to possibly create a little bit of a case study around the work you're doing there? Because it sounds like a really good approach.
Yeah, I mean, Craig O'Donnell is leading on the citizen engagement, and it's taken probably a few weeks to set up. But as I say, step one, the real event starts either this week or next week. So yeah, I would be really happy if that would we could make some kind of case study of our first steps along that. And as we start to move into the once we've got the perhaps initial conversations through and we're all comfortable with how we engage, I think then we start to move on to more prickly subjects such as the digital transformation. And at that point, yes, please, Thomas, get involved.
Okay. We also had a hand up there from Alex Wren.
Yeah, it's Alec for West Dunbartonshire. We've recently upgraded one of our sheltered housing complexes with a transport system, and one of the specs we requested was that it was to be digital compatible, so that once the ARC that East Dunbartonshire run for us would be able to have a fully digital system. However, since it's been completed, we have repeatedly asked for what spec is required to have a fully digital system, and that's where we come unstuck, because they don't appear to be able to tell us exactly what we need, costings are going to be, or anything like that. So we've got a system that would like to be made digital. We're keen to do it. We have got some funding there, and we can't do it at this moment in time.
Okay. We can look and see how we can try and take that forward as well. Other points that have been raised at the moment in the chat have been about national communication strategy. Certainly that would fit in with the one for Scotland approach the playbook's been taking, so we can do that. And then obviously if individual partnerships can decide whether they're onboarding with that or not. And similarly, Gillian's again pointed out we're communicating new expectations for internal staff, so we can deal with that. One of the other groups that had come across as a stakeholder for the previous question, however, was suppliers. And David, is this something you want to talk about now, or do you want to just try and take that offline with Alex? Because with suppliers is obviously going to be an important stakeholder. I'm not sure just how we deal with that now.
Yeah, happy to add a wee bit just now, Colin. I've actually, luckily enough, I've got a meeting with Alex next week, so I've just dropped him a wee message in the chat saying we can chat that over next week. He dropped me an email about that, so happy to have a chat. And I don't think you're alone, Alex, with some of those issues, so we can chat about those a wee bit further. I think more broadly about suppliers, I think they are a key stakeholder as part, as I've mentioned earlier, that there has been a wee bit of work, I would say, to in terms of supplier readiness as part of this programme. So they've struggled. I think they'd admit to that. They've struggled with some of the rigour around the programme. So we are doing what we can to try and kind of to work with them and engage with them. I think we, as Colin mentioned, this is one of the kind of key elements of stakeholder engagement for us. So I think we'd like to maybe improve our relationship with suppliers, or our how we communicate and engage with suppliers to make sure that we can support people like Alex, and we've got a kind of good relationship and a good connection with suppliers over the coming months. So yeah, I think it's part of what we want to do here today is kind of work out what you all think would be the best approach for that, what the best mechanisms are for that, and how we move it forward. We're also we're looking at new procurement frameworks for the coming kind of months. So that's another opportunity for us to look at other suppliers that are there and kind of add some people into the mix there and just kind of extend that group. So it's definitely part of our thinking, and hopefully today we can just build on that a wee bit.
So thanks.
Great. Well, I think based on the discussion we've had so far, the comments which have come in, it would look, and I'd like to say this so you can disagree with me if I'm wrong, but it would seem that this stakeholder engagement pathway does have quite a kind of a clear purpose, and that it would be both useful for us to develop, and it is going to be needed in the relatively near future. So it's good that we're starting to work on this now. I'll just give, does anybody have any final comments they'd like to make in relation to this before I hand over to Colin, and we maybe use Gillian's comment as an excellent link into the second part of this, looking at the workforce pathway.
Okay, so workforce was actually one of the original plans we'd had for pathways as a whole, way back, certainly into end of last year. However, as we're moving forward, there was some internal discussion about whether the workforce essentially were a stakeholder, and therefore we've been part of the stakeholder engagement pathway. And a lot of the comments you've made have obviously pointed out that workforce are really legitimate parts of the stakeholders. However, given the breadth of that audience, I think it's probably still worthwhile considering the workforce as a separate stakeholder in essence, and looking at that in isolation. It'll certainly help to try and streamline the stakeholder engagement pathway anyway. So moving on from this, we have two questions, and like Thomas's, again, we'll take them individually. I like to see both of them there because I can see some people or some answers for the first one ending up being the second. So look at them both, but first of all, what we'll deal with is if you as a partnership have done anything to prepare your workforce for the change, if you've tried to look at any of it, either pre-COVID or indeed because of COVID, if anything has come up in attempts to prepare the workforce, or even any specific part of the workforce for this change. I think it might be easier if we do this with hands rather than in chat, because I think it might be easier for people to explain it, but I'll leave that up to yourselves. Okay, James, you said you've linked to the workforce plan as a specified action point. Sorry, could you explain that one a little bit further?
Yeah, happy to do so. So, we had developed the South Asia Partnership Workforce Plan April last year, and we were aware at that point, obviously, of analog to digital. So within the workforce plan, there was about 14 specific actions covering a range of of activities across the partnership planning, but we knew that this is one that over the life of the workforce plan, so the workforce plan I think it could be 3 to 4 years time scale, but we knew that this is one that's just going to run and build over the period of the workforce plan. So we specifically put it as an action plan. That's more, I suppose, as a check and balance to make sure we do something about it, and that it's on our kind of Pitana system. It's recordable. We have to go and give an update. So for me, the reason why I wanted it on it at that point, even though we hadn't actually set up a project team and we're still annoyingly not quite there with that, but at the very least, we've got that check and balance. That means that we know we have to do something, that it's there in black and white early days, and it's it's there for the public to see. But that's an action plan within the workforce plan that we will develop a roadmap in relation to analog to digital.
Okay, fair enough.
Great. And Ian has raised his hand via the chat window.
Yes, and requested room for a couple.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Pauline here. It's actually Pauline. So just to let you know, we've done quite a lot of work in terms of the workforce and getting ready for analog to digital. We have set up staff team meetings to explain it was all coming, explain the reasons why and how to do it. And in so doing, they've all embraced that this is coming, and 40 of our people now have all been trained in how to program the new digital units and have installed them all. So we have developed a missing heartbeat procedure. So the staff also know daily that they have to attend to the missing heartbeats that come through. And this training has extended to our operators at the contact centre, and they're also aware of the changes that digital transition has brought to Falkirk. So in many respects, we've finished that bit.
Okay, so you've dealt with that the response team and the contact centre, the RC team.
Yes, we've done that.
Yep.
Its training will be ongoing when we do more of our peripheral type work, and we try and take our service users alongside us on that. So we have regular quarterly meetings with the public as well to explain and update them on the digital progress.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yep, we're looking at a digital skills course that we could in some way maybe certify competence in some way for our staff that could, and we can put that in personal training records, give them some sort of credence, if you like, for that. And we're also looking at some of the other courses in terms of diploma level and all the rest of it, but I'd like to do that with some of our staff as well, some of the key members of our staff. Okay,
so a digital skills assessment was for staff to work out where they were was certainly something I'd been kicking around as an idea. Is that, did you go along those lines or?
Well, we have a training section within Falkirk Council headed up by John Swan at HR. So we've got that done with them. So it's an online thing that they do through a thing called the Ollie training centre. So we do it that way. And there's also a Forth Valley College partnership that we can work on as well to further develop and put our staff on digital training courses.
Wow, okay.
That all sounds absolutely fantastic, though, and kind of similar to my response to Andy before. I think there'll be a lot we can learn from you, and we can potentially work into case studies, if that's okay, Pauline, to really start to populate this part of the playbook.
Yeah, no problem. We're very keen to work with you to help get a solution. No problem.
Interesting you should mention Andy, because he's just put his hand up. Andy?
Yes, I just wanted to add, I'm not sure if everyone's come across it, but there is a new PDA about to be trialled. I think it's been in development for a few years, and I think David Brown might remember that I was involved in the first one, but it's now been improved, and I think they're looking for partners who can, who have capacity to engage in it. And I think it does have a very strong digital module in it. So I think that should be winging it to everyone's services soon, I would hope. We plan to try and introduce that once things have settled down a little bit here. But I found the PDA in telehealth was Telecare and telehealth was very good first time round, and the first time it didn't quite have the digital aspect to it, but this one will. So I think that would be a useful thing for a lot of our staff to get on board with.
That sounds great, Andy, and I do remember it well, actually, from our time working together. And I know Doreen's on the call today as well. I think Doreen's been involved in refreshing that qualification, so I think that's a great idea. Doreen, I don't know if there's anything you would add.
Yeah, just I don't have a put my hand up option either, so that's why I couldn't put my hand up to say. Yeah, we're just at the. You're right, Andy. We are at the point of looking for partnerships who would actually be willing to put some of their staff through this. And it is an update from the previous PDA. So you've got there's 5 parts to it. So there's a mandatory unit, and then there's a unit in call handling, one in installation, maintenance, repair. One in response, and there is the new unit, and that is specifically around using digital technologies to support people in health, housing and care. So we're hoping over the next next kind of 4 or 5 weeks to be able to get like partnerships to sign up and to get some of the centres like the colleges to start providing that as well. So yeah, I think Pamela Dimberline's going to be contacting I think it's about 7 or 8 different partnerships to see if they would be willing to do that. But glad to see, Andy, that you would be willing to go through it again. So
James had said he'd be quite interested in it as well. Doreen, for your notes.
Well, James, if you want to contact me, I'm happy to go through that with you.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And sorry, Colin, I was just going to mention about the previous PDA. So Andy will know this better than I do, but at the time, I think the feedback we had from the team who went through it was that it was much more relevant in terms of the work they were doing compared with any other qualification that was around. So we tried in the past to kind of shoehorn staff into SVQ, and it wasn't a great fit. So we were having to kind of manufacture situations for staff to get through the coursework, whereas the PDA, I think, was exactly what they did on a daily basis and helped really kind of refine their learning around it. So I think it sounds really exciting for us.
Yeah, and just to add to that, David, I think Dorian probably clarify this, but it's a higher qualification, isn't it, Dorian?
Yeah, it's moved up to level 7. It was previously level 6, but it's now level 7. Yeah. And I think the reason why there wasn't so many people in the last design of it was we really struggled to get people who would be assessors and verifiers, because within like partnership areas they didn't have people with those skills, and so the manager couldn't just take that on as well. So that's something, again, that's been addressed in the development of this, and that's why the colleges and centres are being signed up.
Okay.
So,
we'll put
Colin,
Doreen's email in this as well. I notice someone's asked for that. Oh, there you go. David's got it down. Thanks. Sorry,
Colin.
Jen. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to jump in and say that I was just listening into the conversation there. So I work for the digital office, and I'm responsible for the digital leadership and skills area. And I also link into the workforce planning with NHS and Pauline Dimberlin and the wider group there. So we have links into that already for the workforce planning piece. So that's something that we're already working on at a national level, so we can bring back learning from that group. So we actually have sessions next week on that. So I can certainly link that back into yourself, Colin, and David.
Yeah, we can spread that back around. Keen to move on onto the next question, but Andy, your hand's up again.
I think maybe Andy didn't lower his hands, Colin.
Okay.
Great. There's question 2 for you.
And we can't lower it. So Andy, if you're able to lower your hand at any point, that would be. There we go. Thank you. Just so if you do raise your hand next time, I'd actually know when it comes up. So really, I'll widen this question a little bit. What challenges exist around preparing the workforce? Now, obviously, we've got some partnerships that have advanced onwards, and so hopefully they'll be able to tell us about challenges they've met. But other ones, what challenges you're anticipating? So again, like Thomas's question, really looking for ways that we can help and expect to be putting pieces together to help people through the process. So it's the challenges that you're facing that you'd like to see this, you'd like to see us being able to assist you with. I'll open that up to the floor again.
Alison, you were the first to raise your hand.
Yes, I think one of the challenges, particularly for the sort of installation workforce, will be the multiple use of multiple data management platforms for each supplier, because they'll all look different and they'll all work a different way. And yes, just trying for the team to be able to become skilled proficiently in each of those data management platforms. Especially if you've got about, depending on how many suppliers you're going to use and if you're going to use a number of suppliers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a really good point, Alison, and I know in some cases in the past it was seen as good practice, and I think it was a good idea to have more than one supplier in your chain in case something went wrong with a supplier, or for whatever reason. It was good to have devices in the field from a few, but actually it would be really tempting to move to a place where you only have one, because then you only have to ask staff to use one device management platform, and it's much easier in a lot of ways, and that might bring a bit of risk as well if there was an issue with a supplier further downstream. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
James has shared cultural, that shift in understanding that applies to senior and frontline, by the way. And I think that's a really, really good point. I'll make David and Colin groan by sharing my favourite statistic, but in general, the cultural and the workforce culture is far more important to achieving success in a digital innovation than the actual technology. In reality, the split is about 80-20 with the focus on workforce culture. And I think just changing to digital telecare, period, like you say, James, is a shift like that. But equally, I know a lot of you aren't stopping there, and you're looking at bringing in other innovations and changes to how you deliver services, and that in itself will then offer even greater differences.
I see Ian Pauline's hand is up again.
It's Ian this time.
Okay.
So if we're talking about challenges to the workforce in terms of using digital, one of the things in Falkirk that we realised a wee while ago was our responder services or our responder staff. It's one of the things that highlighted to us is our responder staff demographic is ageing. Okay, generally 45, 50 and over is the age group of our employees or staff who are responders. And our responders are also responsible for the installation and deinstallation of our digital telecare units or alarms. To do a lot of that installation and deinstallation requires access to our device management platform to program those alarms remotely. And we certainly recognised quite a gap in their skills and abilities. Some have never used email, some, get their family and friends to order off Amazon for them. Carers inherently applied for a job 20 years ago that was to deliver care, not to manage technology. So I think it was just important that we mentioned from a Falkirk perspective that we need to be very mindful of the demographic of some of our employees, and that was one of the key reasons that when Polly mentioned earlier, working in partnership with our organisational development people and the partnership with Forth Valley College, who offered a digital skills programme course, whatever we're going to call it. And I do actually think that was linked into a lot of the stuff the local government digital office had going. I think that was also a part of that group as well. But it's just to highlight the challenges, because we are talking about care staff who, and certainly in Falkirk, and I can't speak for other partnerships, but generally care staff who are responsible for managing some of this technology are of an older demographic. That's me saying that really PC. Did you notice?
Yeah, and that's entirely fair. It is issues we need to be aware of. It does cover in what we've mentioned earlier as well. Okay, thank you.
It's Jenny again jumping in, Colin. Sorry. Another key element of the work that we do for digital leadership and skills is linking in with the SCVO for essential skills training and matching the gaps that are within that type of workforce in that particular demographic. So it might be worthwhile thinking about how we again link and join those pieces of work together and what can be done to do and support colleagues who maybe require some more basics and essential skills training. And it was interesting, I was listening about the work that's been done on some of the gap analysis in some of the partnerships and how we could build on that as well. And I think that again ties back into that bigger national picture across both the health and social care partnerships and local government, just on how we engage with those people and offer that kind of support to them.
Mm-hmm. And following on there as well, Geraldine pointed out, actually there's quite a few interesting comments there. There's one from Gillian that I'll come back to, but Geraldine pointing out the issue of having people not locking themselves out of devices when passwords need changed, and what to do if there's no signal in the home when people visit. Presumably, if there's any issues with Wi-Fi and someone tries to change their own router, there will be potentially issues with that as well in the future. So supporting ICT out of hours, all these sorts of things. These are a lot of things that are going to have to be thought through fairly clearly and made made fairly obvious to people as they're as the system moves forward. Geraldine, you pointed out that you were thinking of how to access the system if there's no signal. The idea of technological black spots or black spots for signal black spots is something we are currently dealing with and trying to come up with an article that can answer that. But once again, probably for this purposes, needing to make sure that is very clear English as well, and trying to avoid ICT jargon, which I would imagine the first document probably will.
Geraldine has just also asked there, Colin, about the SCVO supporting non-third sector around essential skills. Mm-hmm. We've actually partnered with the SCVO to deliver that particular essential skills training. So the digital office lead on that, and we will be in partnership with the SCVO delivering that to non-third sector. It will be for all local government and health and social care partnerships, and I can provide more details on that if anybody's interested in it. But yes, that's something that the digital office is leading on with the SCVO, particularly for that purpose.
Okay. Appreciate time is pushing on. Anyone else got anything else they'd like to comment on the workforce? I think it's probably clear from this, as with Thomas's comment about the stakeholder, that there is certainly an appetite for a workforce pathway. The way this is going, I would still suggest that it's probably worth keeping the two of them separate. Just the breadth of information. There's a hand up, is there? Oh, Alison, I think your hand's still up. I don't know if you're actually asking anything different. No.
No, sorry, I'll lower it.
That's okay. I think Ian's just raised possibly a final point there, culture of fear around digital, and that's very true for certain demographics. And by that, I'm not necessarily even meaning age demographics, but certain groups have this fear of the keep it simple. The more bits you put in, the more likely a system is to break. And they're not entirely wrong, but at the same time, the benefits probably outweigh the risks there, I would have thought, in a lot of this. David, you started saying something and I kind of carried on talking off the top of you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention Alison's hand was up, Colin, so just to bring your attention to that.
Okay. Alison, your hand is now up.
Sorry, technical issues here, ironically.
You're just waving at us, Alison.
Yeah.
No problem. Does anyone have any last comments or thoughts you want to raise on the workforce pathway before we finish off on? Okay. So thank you for all of your participation. That's been really useful for us. We've got quite a wealth of stakeholders there that we can go back and look at. And again, that supplier engagement aspect raising its head again. This is something we've tried to deal with in the past, and we'll work through. As David said, he's had conversations with suppliers, and we will continue to engage with them as well, to try and support partnerships. In terms of the workforce, both from the questions about workforce and the questions in the stakeholder section, again, sort of full breadth of workforce based stakeholders to look at there. I notice even people talking about finance as being a required team to talk to, so we'll make sure that we'll try and look at how to, engaging with all aspects of those. Particularly, obviously, as people raised, the way of ensuring we get both management and frontline staff buy-in as this moves forward, to make sure that people are able to understand the benefits of digital. So frontline staff can be digital ambassadors for us, and so that the senior management will actually pay for it. So as we're moving forwards, then we will go away and try and work out some designs for the pathways. The three existing pathways have been fairly similar in their designs up until now, and I think these two are going to be similar to each other, but not necessarily to the three previous ones. They'll probably still have the discovery, planning and implementation phases, but just how they interact will probably be quite different. So we'll look at those, and we'll probably come back to people as we go. If you are interested in helping us with that, and keen to help support the development of this, if you could put your email into the chat, then we'll know to get in touch with you again. I think in the next sort of week or so, actually in the next little while, I'll maybe not tie us down to next week, but in the next short while, we'll come back out with a document to talk about some of the things that have been raised in this, and possibly also some of the information that Jenny has offered about SCVO and other non-Telecare digital skills, or up until now non-Telecare digital skills, so skills work that Digital Office has been doing. Yep,
Colin, I've just wanted to jump in there and just say that we have got communities available on our Microsoft Teams for both digital skills and digital champions and the SCVO model, and anybody is totally, it's open to anybody, so please get in touch, and you can just get in touch with me as well. I'm happy for my email to be shared if anybody's got any specific questions that they want me to pick up. I'm here if anybody needs me.
No problem. That segues very nicely into my my last piece then, of three other pieces of work that we've had in terms of engagement, as Jenny said, we've got a Teams channel for digital office stakeholders to be able to engage with us, and we'll put details of that. Or in fact, of all three of these pieces, we'll put them into the chat and probably into the document when we send it around as well. So we've got that Teams channel. Should anyone wish to join that, Thomas is also leading an implementation community to bring together partnerships as we're looking at this, and also on Tuesday we will have a webinar to look at the procurement pathway and to introduce the newest existing Telecare playbook pathway, and that's on this coming Tuesday 16th from 2 to 3. And again, details of all of these are currently being posted in the chat by Laura kindly. So thank you for your attention, everyone. That's been very good of you. Has anyone got any last comments, questions, or otherwise? No hands. So thank you very much. It's been useful, and hopefully we'll hear from you again shortly.
Thank you, everyone.